Hi y'all, if you haven't seen today's video. So like I mentioned, today I'm going to do kind of what I usually do around here, which is react to my fellow Christian content creators. So today I'm going to react to Paul and Morgan. If you don't know who they are a very young, traditional, conservative Christian couple. I believe they're fundamentalist, which means they kind of adhere to that stricter, more traditional view of Christianity. So since I don't adhere to that, I don't agree with that version of Christianity, I wanted to react to them today and offer a counterpoint, if you will. So in today's video, they are doing a live Q&A with their followers, and in the middle of the Q&A, they end up getting into a bit of a tiff. So I just want to unpack like a 10-minute clip of that tiff because it leads to a deeper conversation about toxic masculinity within Christianity. And I just kind of want to offer a different point of view about marriage because Paul and Morgan are that young Christian couple that try to act like they know everything about marriage, even though they've only been married for like a year or two, maybe a bit longer, maybe like 4 years. They've been married for like 4 or 5 years. But before they got married, they barely knew each other really before. So they kind of did the traditional Christian thing where they, dated for a few months, got married really quick. So they didn't really know each other very well when they got married. So anyway, they try to act like they have all the answers to marriage anyway. And so since I've been married for 3 years, I kind of wanted to give a different point of view about marriage from a Christian perspective. So we're going to talk about all of that and more. Let's go ahead and roll the tape where they are kicking off their tiff.
Isaiah do deliverance on Paul?
Well, guys, the tea is no. Many people wanted him to. I'll tell you that much. Many people that were with us in the group wanted Isaiah to do deliverance on Paul.
So
I know I already paused it, but just for a bit of context. So right before this live stream, they were doing a series called 24 Hours with Blank. And in that series, they are going to spend time with different Christian content creators who don't have the same point of view as them on some topics. So the first person that they collaborated with for this 24 Hours with series is a young guy named Isaiah Saldivar, who has made a name for himself in Christian communities as the demon slayer, which is a name that he doesn't prefer, but that's how some people may know him. So I'm just going to use that. But anyway, Isaiah is a big proponent of deliverance ministry, which is like the modern day of exorcism. And it also encapsulates praying for people to be set free from different addictions like drugs, alcohol, etc. So that was the first person they collaborated with. And that's why they're kind of joking that when they hopped on a live stream with Isaiah on his channel to kind of help make some content for him in return for him being on their channel, when they were on Isaiah's live stream, Isaiah's fans, who are, all about deliverance ministry, right? If they follow him, they were saying that Paul needed to be delivered because Paul was giving pushback to Isaiah on different topics like, should Christians drink alcohol at all? Should Christians do yoga at all? And so when Paul was pushing back against Isaiah, they were saying he needed to be delivered and Isaiah should deliver him and all of that. And, I'm sure they were just joking. I mean, maybe some were serious, who knows, but I'm sure they were just joking. So that is the context for why they are kind of kicking off this fight, because clearly Morgan, kind of says that Paul is, being a little awkward or had been a little awkward on the live stream with Isaiah. So that's going to kind of be our next jumping point into this fight.
A little behind the scenes, those of you who watched the 24 Hours With, and there's a chunk in the 24 Hours With where I actually left some of our live stream on Isaiah's channel and I pulled it over to our video. There were a number of people in his live chat, like a pretty good amount, that were very displeased with some of the pushback that I was giving to Isaiah, particularly maybe around alcohol, yoga, and so forth. And so they were saying in the chat, it looks like to me, this was them. It looks to me like Paul needs deliverance. Paul needs deliverance. Paul should be delivered.
Someone deliver Paul.
Someone deliver Paul. Wink, wink, Isaiah.
Yeah.
I actually, multiple times during the stream, was like trying to be really careful with my mannerisms, and I still got flack, but because I was like, I don't want to give people any more reason to think like I'm twitching over here and it's a demon.
Even though you literally were laughing, like the creepiest laugh I've ever heard. You were like, it was so disturbing. So
Okay,
maybe you did actually.
That is so rude. I will go find that. I will literally go find it right now on stream. And the creepiest laughter. I really did need to deliver. I was really having fun.
No, the laugh that I'm talking about.
Exactly. I literally left. Didn't I leave it in our video?
Yeah, and it's terrifying.
Because that's how unashamed I was of it.
So this is the crux of the fight. So Paul here, as you can see, is a very sensitive kind of guy, and I talk about that in the last video I made about the two of them. And I don't mean sensitive in like the emotionally intelligent way. I mean sensitive in like an immature way. I think he is a very emotionally immature young guy, and you can see here he is very quick to be upset. And even though he is trying to laugh it off, like smiling after he said, that was so rude. You can see even in this pause right here, you can see like the veins in his neck, you can see his brow is furrowed, his eyes are narrowed, like even his body language indicates that he is truly offended and upset by what I thought was just a lighthearted joke. I thought Morgan was just teasing him in a lighthearted way. But Paul clearly did not take it that way, and we'll see more of his reaction right now.
Creepy as heck, and you know it.
I disagree.
You were doing it on purpose. Like you were just like being a doofus.
I think you're exaggerating.
Okay. No.
I literally do.
Famous last words of a man. I think you're exaggerating.
I'm just keeping it real. Like I genuinely think that you're exaggerating.
Okay, yeah. Everyone, you guys share your thoughts.
But
You guys share your thoughts.
I'll see if I can find it.
If I was exaggerating.
I'll see if I can find it right now.
Very disturbing, creepy, weirdo laugh of Paul's.
I disagree. I mean, I was genuine.
So I kind of like Morgan in that moment. I don't know. I like Morgan in a lot of moments, not all the time, because she says some stuff I don't agree with. But in this moment, I like her that she, kind of made that joke of like, oh, famous last words for a guy when you tell a woman you're over exaggerating. And by her reaction, I can tell that this is maybe something she has heard a lot from Paul, because it seemed to just kind of really trigger her and set her off. So I think she has heard things like you're over exaggerating, or you're being ridiculous, or you're being over emotional. I think she has heard sentiments like that a lot from Paul. So anyway, to kind of make his case and prove that the laugh wasn't that creepy, Paul is now going to play the video clip for us.
Only having fun, so I was like, like that's literally. I'll find it.
It was worse than that, but that was also creepy.
My point is, that was so creepy to Morgan. Morgan's over
creepy.
So that gives you guys perspective on Morgan thinks it's incredibly creepy that I'm over here doing that. When I felt like Isaiah and the chat, I was looking over here and seeing these comments come in the chat, and I'm just like, whoa, like they literally are.
Play the video and stop talking.
I'll try to find it.
So again, you can see how this really kind of got under Paul's skin when everyone was, again, in my mind, joking about the fact that he needed deliverance. I mean, again, I'm sure some of Isaiah's more hardcore fans were probably serious about it, but the general vibe I got, even from Isaiah himself, was that it was all just kind of a joke, that no one was really taking it that seriously. So yeah, it's just funny to me to see Paul kind of doubling down in his, kind of offended attitude, rather than lightening up and realizing that it was all just a joke.
But
Angel
my
said
point,
it was really weird. I'm with Morgan.
My point was,
she's not exaggerating, Paul. I agree with Morgan.
Oh wait, whoa, Morgan, embarrassing your husband in public is not respectful. I'll be honest, Morgan, I feel like you are verging on embarrassing.
Am I
your
embarrassing
husband.
you, babe?
You're going a little far.
Okay, I apologize if I'm embarrassing you right now, but we were just talking about goofy things, all right?
You're being a little pushy with your perspective.
Oh, is that what's embarrassing you? Me being
Yeah, so again, you can kind of see the emotional immaturity here with Paul. Someone in the chat says like, oh, Morgan, I don't think you're, being very respectful to your husband right now. Which again, that person could have also been joking. I mean, probably not, knowing Paul and Morgan's audience, but you can see that again, Paul just kind of doubles down on being offended, telling Morgan that she's being rude. And then here he switches it up and he's like, oh no, you're just being pushy. There's a difference between being pushy and being rude. And by the way, I don't think Morgan is being rude. She hasn't called Paul names. I mean, yeah, she might have said your laugh was creepy, you were being creepy, but she wasn't calling him names like you were being an idiot, or you were being so dumb, or you were being so stupid. I think that's being rude. I think here she is just also doubling down on her point of view that the laugh was creepy and that Paul just needs to kind of lighten up and take a joke. And I mean, I do appreciate that she, kind of apologizes, because of course, like in relationships, there will be times when we joke around with our significant other and we don't realize when we're taking it too far, or we don't realize when they're being offended, even if we have teased them like that before or joked with them about that before. Sometimes people just aren't in the mood to be, teased or joked with. So I do like that she kind of took a moment to try to apologize to Paul and say, hey, if you are feeling offended, even if I think that it was all just a joke, I'm sorry. So I like that she took a moment to kind of apologize, but then that all kind of quickly unravels here in a minute.
pushy.
I think you're being pushy and it's a little embarrassing.
Okay, sorry. I won't push anymore.
No, you're allowed to push, but you're being a little aggressive with your pushing. Like,
I'm
your
just saying
your
that
opinion
I thought the
is
laugh
right.
was creepy.
I'll see if I can find it. But my point was that there were multiple times when I'm seeing all those comments come in, so I'm like, I can't give them any more ammunition, even though it appears like. So you agree with Isaiah, or you agree that I did need deliverance? That's what you're sounding
No,
like. That's what you're
babe.
sounding like.
Paul.
That's what you're sounding like to me.
Okay, now you.
So, yeah, that really got under his skin. I think he's also the kind of guy that gets really, really hung up on other people's opinions of him and perceptions of him. And if people don't perceive him in the exact way that he wants to be perceived, I think he gets really, really insecure in those moments. So I think that's what we're seeing here is a lot of insecurity coming out, a lot of worrying about other people's opinion. I mean, he even jumped to the conclusion right here with Morgan of like, oh, well, you're basically agreeing with everyone and saying that I needed to be delivered too. When Morgan literally did not say that. She just said your laugh was creepy. You were being a bit creepy and weird in the live stream at that point. That's all she was saying. You know, I never heard her say anything like, you need to be delivered, or I agree with people that Isaiah should have prayed for you. So, yeah, Paul jumping to those conclusions is very emotionally immature in my mind.
You're being pushy, speaking over me.
I'm just saying that's what it sounded like to me.
And you can say that 10,000 more times, or you can let me talk.
Go ahead.
And tell you.
Go ahead.
That no, you know 1,000,000%. I do not think.
No, I agree.
That
I agree.
you
So that's why
needed to be delivered.
That's why I'm kind of surprised that you're saying it like that.
I was making a joke of your creepy laugh. Maybe you did need to be delivered in a joking manner.
Okay. Let's see. This might have been it right here.
Welcome to the world.
My point was. Okay, here it was. My point was.
I love Morgan's side there. Like, she just seems so over it. I feel like this poor woman has had to kind of help Paul manage and regulate his own emotions. And I talk about that in the last video I made on them, where they get into a big argument about Paul, you know, being unhappy when Morgan won't have sex with him that evening, especially if they've gotten in a fight. You know, he still expects that they would hop into bed together, but Morgan understandably is not of that opinion because they just got in a fight. And that fight very much echoes this one. And I see a lot of similarities in Paul's, you know, kind of offended nature, how he jumps to conclusions, how he comes across as very insecure, and how Morgan has to, you know, comfort him and appease him and reassure him and basically kind of help him regulate or manage his own emotions by getting him into a better headspace. And I think as someone's spouse, that's not your job. It's not your job to, you know, kind of regulate their emotions or manage their emotions. Of course, you can comfort them and stuff like that, but it's up to that own person to manage and regulate their emotions. And Paul clearly is not doing a good job of that right now. So anyway, they're about to play the long-awaited clip of Paul's creepy laugh.
Was that I was like trying to really be careful with my mannerisms because like I felt in that environment.
Yes, like if you coughed or something.
A sneeze, a burp, which sometimes I do. I already burped on the stream. A twitch, they would have been like, oh, see. And I think someone might have even done that. But like, oh, see, Paul definitely needs to be delivered. That's just how I felt. Overall, it really was a fun stream. Shout out to Isaiah for having us on his channel. His channel's popping. And I really enjoyed the back and forth. But I'm just saying, like, that's a little bit of how I felt. All right, I think this is it. This is... Okay, here it is. Okay, here we go. We'll let you guys decide. We'll let you guys decide in real time. I'm sorry if this is just getting kind of awkward. It just is what it is. Here you go.
Show them the volume the video. Up. Hold it up to the screen.
But every logo, everything we do, I'm so enjoying this. Yeah, people love this. No one ever pushes back on this a little bit. But everything that we do, you know, with heat and water, we can say this is from, but these are not practices, these are products. Oh my goodness, that was absolutely horrible.
So there you go, the long-awaited laugh that kicked off this whole argument. I don't think it was creepy. I think it was a bit weird and I think it was a bit awkward, but I think Paul was a bit weird and awkward during that whole live stream. I think Isaiah kind of made him uncomfortable because Isaiah, as you will quickly see if you go back and listen or watch rather the video I made on him, which is literally the last video before this one. I do a whole profile of Isaiah, and he is a very intimidating kind of presence. So I could see how a guy like Paul, who is insecure, who is emotionally immature, would get intimidated with someone like Isaiah. So I think that's where the weird laugh and kind of over dramatic nature of Paul during that live stream came from. I think it came from his insecurity and maybe his, being intimidated by Isaiah. But there you go, the laugh that kicked off this whole fight. But don't worry, it's not done yet.
No, babe. No one's saying it was absolutely horrible. It's
You
just
were?
weird and creepy. I'm sorry. That's not your real laugh. You were being a weirdo on purpose. Were you not? Trying to be a goofball. It's fine if you were. I'm not saying that that's wrong.
In the live
But
stream.
it was creepy as heck.
In the live stream right now, you heard.
Bruh, that
heard
is
what Morgan
so creepy. Okay, yeah, that was a little bit creepy.
Okay, I do think, and then we'll move on.
It just looks like Paul was joking. Not that bad. Good. I agree. The laugh was creepy.
In the moment, and then we'll move on. We landed on this too long. In the
oh my
moment,
goodness, it's worse than I remember.
in the moment, listen. I even read, like, I was rending my heart, like giving a genuine, passionate, like, here's how I feel. Here's what the Bible says. And then I look up and see in the live chat, and maybe I shouldn't have read the live chat, but someone said, like, oh my goodness, what is Paul even doing? And it was like when I was literally quoting scripture. And so I'm seeing like this stuff come in. And so maybe I did get like a little bit over the top.
Which is fine.
But that's not what you made me feel like the way you were describing the laugh. It's you saying, which is fine, but before you were like, it was insanely creepy and you maybe should have been delivered.
I was trying to make a joke.
So here he clearly put words in her mouth by saying, you said the laugh was creepy and that I needed to be delivered. Again, Morgan did not say that on that live stream. On this live stream, I mean, maybe she said it to him off camera, but I don't think so, by the fact that she's so adamant that, like, no, I don't think that you, or I didn't think that you needed to be delivered. I thought you were just being weird. And yeah, you can just see that, like, Paul is totally misinterpreting this situation through the lens of his insecurity. And I just feel really frustrated for Morgan. It'd be so frustrating to fight with someone like this, you know, who just can't let it go and is trying to put words in your mouth and is so insistent on their point of view and they won't see things from your side. I can only imagine Morgan's frustration with being married to a man like Paul.
Of maybe you should have been delivered because of those creepy laughs that you had, because that wasn't the only time that you made the creepy laugh. And so it was a joke. I apologize if it went too far.
That's okay. Thomas does say, as a man, it seems like Morgan teases Paul a lot. It felt like you've maybe been teasing me a little bit more in this stream.
Okay.
All right.
Let's move along, people.
You guys were able to decide. Some of you did say that it was creepy. Fair enough.
Yeah, I can just feel Morgan's frustration just like radiating through the screen, especially when she lets out that sigh at the end of the video. And I mean, I don't blame her. I can only imagine how frustrating it would be to be married to a guy like Paul who clearly can't take a joke and can't kind of read the room and see when people are just trying to joke and be lighthearted. And if you think that's it, you're wrong, because this fight continues on. The saga continues on, because the next day after they have that tiff, Morgan makes a post on their community page on YouTube addressing the fight, and we're going to read it and unpack it right now. So the post says, "Hi, Pamela. Morgan here. If you were on our last live, you probably witnessed a moment where Paul and I had a tiff, but watching it back on my own, I realized it was more than that. I'm really sorry you all had to witness me go way overboard with my joke towards Paul. Watching it back, I was kind of grossed out and honestly didn't even remember being that intense/aggressive. I believe part of me acting that way has to do with being an exhausted mom, 19 weeks pregnant, but that doesn't excuse my behavior. I apologized to Paul afterwards, and now I feel like it's only right to say sorry to you guys. Going live is not easy, and we won't always get it right. I appreciate you all showing me grace, and let's all pray that never happens again on my end, because your girl went wild. I love you guys. Thanks for being a part of this journey." So now I want to read some of the comments that were left underneath that post so you can get a feel for what people were saying. So there's my comment at the very top. We don't need to read that one, but 86 people agreed with it. So, I'm not alone. All right, Paul should apologize to you for freaking out over nothing. He nitpicks you all the time. You don't need to apologize. Paul got way too upset over something very lighthearted. It was kind of disturbing. Oh, sounds like Paul got his fifis hurt. That one made me laugh. You didn't do anything wrong. Paul seemed to be very sensitive and nitpicky. The laugh was undeniably creepy. I would have teased my husband and he would have laughed with me and repeatedly done the creepy laugh again for fun. You shouldn't have to walk on eggshells around your spouse. Someone else says, "If you can't have banter like that with your husband, I'm sorry for you." Someone else said, "Morgan, you shouldn't have to apologize. It wasn't that big a deal, and Paul shouldn't have taken it personally. He knows you're struggling right now. You both just talked about how difficult it's been for you being pregnant and taking care of Luca." That is their firstborn son. "It's really disappointing Paul couldn't have remembered how exhausting and how emotionally difficult pregnancy can be and just let it go at the time. Personally, I think he's the one who should apologize. I hope he didn't make you write this." Another person says, "Dang, I didn't think it was a big deal at all. I felt like Paul took it way too personally, but props to you for your humility." Another person said, "Love y'all. I also think Paul should apologize for referring to Morgan as the squirrel when she beat him in trivia a couple weeks ago. He kept making jokes over and over about how smart Morgan is and was being very condescending/sarcastic, all because he lost, but we're all human. Just forgive each other. Love you both and hope for the best." Another person said, "He's so toxic. Get out." Someone else said it was a harmless initial joke about the tone of the laugh, which did sound creepy. I think Paul was being overly sensitive on this one, but that's okay because we're all human and get our feelings hurt sometime. He kept harping on it and trying to get you to retract your statement. If he just laughed at the initial joke and kept the convo going, it would have never escalated. Also, he cracks silly jokes like that at you plenty. You both do silly jest at each other. Most of the time, you guys just chuckle at them and continue on with your convo. I think sometimes one of you feels more sensitive at the time and it gets blown up bigger. That's fine, we're all human and we all feel vulnerable at times. Someone else said, "You made a joke. You did nothing wrong. In fact, I laughed when you said that because Paul's laugh was creepy. And that's okay. He shouldn't have taken it so hard. Honestly, Paul needs thicker skin. You should be allowed to be yourself, Morgan." Another person said, "Paul needs to go to therapy and learn how to deal with his emotions. He's overly sensitive. No wonder why you describe yourself as an exhausted mom." And then this is the last one I want to read because I think this person summed up what happened pretty well. "Why can't you both just recognize your fault? Morgan didn't know that her joke and pushback would be viewed as disrespectful/insensitive/mean. And Paul let something that was so minor and funny offend him to the point that he felt the need to address it publicly and prolong the disagreement even longer. There could have been just a quick, yeah, okay, Morgan, rather than spending 5+ minutes looking for a 2-second clip to prove the other wrong. And if Paul was still annoyed by the whole thing, you could have both discussed it off camera. Nobody would have known Paul felt disrespected and teased had he not acted so offended, and he probably wouldn't have felt as disrespected if he didn't choose to prolong the situation on camera. Like, would he have really felt so offended and disrespected if this had happened off camera? Also, I really think Paul was just trying to justify his offended reaction when he said he claimed that Morgan thought he needed deliverance. Paul, you know your wife doesn't think you're a demon. So what's interesting to me about the community post is that it seems like Morgan is the one kind of taking full responsibility for the fight. I mean, the post itself is addressed, to us from Morgan, right? She says, Morgan here, so implying she was the one who wrote it. This is coming from just her. So it's interesting to see that she takes kind of sole ownership of the fight, and it was kind of disappointing for me to see as a woman that she kind of chalked it up to like, oh, I was just being, hormonal, like I'm, 18 weeks pregnant, so I'm just chalking it up to pregnancy hormones and blah, blah, blah. And, not that can't be true, right? Maybe her hormones were driving her crazy that day. I definitely know as a woman how that goes when my hormones make me more irritated than usual and make me, have a response to something that isn't, proportional. So I get that, and I think there is some validity to that, but I can also see that that was something Paul kind of impressed upon her of like, hey, I think you were being too hormonal. I think you were being too, rageful. I think you were being too pushy, like he said in the clip. And I think those are all ways that men kind of shut down women, right? By saying you're being too emotional, you're being too hormonal, you're being too naggy, you're being too pushy. Like, those are common ways that we have seen, men kind of shut down women. And that's why I think there's a bit of toxic masculinity at play, because I think Paul knows that those are, easy ways to kind of shut down a woman, because of course women don't want to be seen as hormonal and naggy and, crazy and ridiculous and irrational. We don't want to be seen that way. And so when a man calls us those things, it can very easily cause us to kind of shut down and be like, oh, well, yeah, maybe I am being a nag. Maybe I am being hormonal. Maybe I am being moody. Maybe I am being, crazy. And so yeah, I think there's some toxic masculinity at play with Paul, kind of, from what I interpret, kind of talking to Morgan behind the scenes and making her feel like she was being too hormonal and moody. And, my biggest takeaway from this community post is, if Paul had just kind of laughed with Morgan, if he had just kind of laughed at himself a bit and had been like, yeah, you know what? That I could see how you would think that's a creepy laugh. I could see how you would think I was maybe being a little bit silly or a little bit over dramatic. If he just laughed it off and kind of laughed along with her and with the audience, this whole fight would have been dissolved and it would have been over, right? Morgan wouldn't have had to make that community post, and I guarantee you she made it because they probably continued fighting about that fight once they turned the camera off, because again, it seemed like they didn't really resolve anything. Morgan apologized, but it felt very like half-hearted and it was kind of monotone. She was like, I'm sorry, whatever. And Paul was like, okay, fine, blah, blah, blah. So it seemed like they didn't really resolve it. So I guarantee you they probably kept fighting about that after the cameras were turned off. And then Paul pushed Morgan to make that community post, because I think Paul is also, like I said earlier, I think he's really concerned with the way that people perceive him and them, like the two of them. I think he wants to come across as, the perfect husband, Prince Charming, like they have it all together, like they're the perfect couple, it's just them against the world. And I think he doesn't want anything to reflect badly on them, even though they'll label their live streams titles like our most honest and vulnerable live stream ever. I don't think Paul wants to be so vulnerable to admit that they are not a perfect couple and he's not a perfect husband, right? I don't think he wants to be that vulnerable and that honest, and he doesn't want to come across as a bad husband, or he doesn't want to come across like their marriage is, you know, falling apart or they're not really a good match for each other, or blah, blah, blah. I think he wants to kind of control the narrative and control how they appear to people. So I think that's why he maybe pushed Morgan to write that post, because based on Morgan's, you know, attitude in the live stream, it seemed like she wasn't really that sorry. Like, it seemed like she was just kind of tired and over it and frustrated that her husband just couldn't take a joke. You know, it didn't seem like she was truly sorry. And, you know, maybe she did. I'll give Paul the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Morgan did reflect on things later that evening or the next day, and she was like, yeah, you know, I could see how I was teasing Paul a bit too much. But again, they could have left that resolution between the two of them. They didn't need to go back and make this community post addressing it. I think we live in a day and age where people post a lot online. I always joke that I want to know less about people, because I think people just show way too much of their lives, and you don't owe people that. You don't owe people your honesty and your vulnerability all the time, right? You know, if there are some things you want to keep between you and your husband, you can absolutely do that, Paul and Morgan. You know, you don't need to share every nitty gritty detail of your life with your audience. I think they both could have just left it with that fight. I don't think they needed to make a community post addressing it. But if you think it stops there, if you think it's over, you're still wrong, because they did have to address it again in another live stream. So we're gonna unpack that clip real quick. I sped it up a little bit because they talk kind of slow, and like Paul said, we've landed on this for too long. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up here with this clip of them addressing the tiff yet again, because the community post apparently wasn't enough. So here we go with this clip right now.
And I was gonna wait to like make my apology until we were like live, because I just felt like that would be better. But then apparently, like, Paul was telling me that people were commenting like on our last live about it, and so I was kind of like, all right, well, I should probably just address it right now. So I wrote something up, and the next day, apparently it was a mixed bag of comments.
Very mixed bag.
Paul read me a couple, and I was like, that's enough.
Let's just say the surge of people, man, this sounds bad. The surge of people wanting you to leave me has been kind of like chill
for a bit.
But that ball started rolling again.
Me apologizing. Get out of there, Morgan. Get out of that crazy, terrible marriage. How dare you apologize for something that you did? Ugh. I don't get it. Like, if these people are married, how are they surviving if they never apologize for anything that they do? Especially if what they do is, like, really bad. Like,
one good thing came out of it. One good thing came out of this.
One great thing came out of this.
I hop on to our Paul and Morgan Instagram, and someone had sent us this in a DM without like any words to it. And so I look at it and I'm just like, wait, what's going on here? I think it was in response. They're calling me a baby. It's pretty good.
Hide your face.
Hold on.
It's Photoshop. And Paul is in a stroller.
Yeah, it's a pretty good Photoshop job.
I mean,
but I think that they're saying that I was a baby. And the whole ordeal.
It's so interesting because like some people were like, it really was not like a big deal. But then some people were like, yeah, I noticed it and was like genuinely becoming concerned. Like, Morgan, you're going too far. Whatever. But personally, I watched it back and was like, oh my goodness, did I like swallow a rage pill? Like, what's wrong with me?
What had you eaten like in the hours leading up to our going live?
I can't even tell you what I just ate 10 minutes ago. Oh, but yeah, it's just so funny. Like, you can't please anyone. But you know what only matters is me and my husband being on great terms, and we are.
Ever since you apologized, we are doing so well.
Oh, wait, it was even before I apologized. Paul was Mr. Humble over here, like, oh, it's okay.
I was humble, but I told you that I felt like you went too far.
Yeah, you did.
I ain't no pushover husband.
Fine.
I ain't no pushover husband.
If you don't have a husband or wife who like calls you out when you're acting kind of crazy, then you shouldn't get married. And if you are married and they're not calling you out, you should have a meeting with them. That's how we grow, people. All right, anywho.
If you guys love the drama of it all, which you should probably check yourself. I don't know. I just feel like everyone is. Morgan, this is bad, but I feel like everyone kind of enjoys a little drama in their life.
Of course.
If you like the drama, just go back and look at go over to our community page tab, look at Morgan's apology, and read some of those comments. Woof.
So it's interesting because that clip kind of confirmed a lot of my suspicions, if you will. So my first suspicion was that, Paul pushed Morgan to make that community post. And in the clip, she confirms that by saying, I was going to wait until next week, a week later from that first live stream, to address the fight because I wanted to do it on live. I thought it'd be better to do it on live with you guys. But then she says, Paul, however, started reading the comments and seeing all of these negative comments trickle in, and he felt like I needed to address it sooner. So my suspicion that she was pushed by Paul to make that post was, proven to be correct. The second thing, which was kind of disappointing again as a woman, was to see that Morgan kind of leaned into that whole idea of like, oh, I was just being hormonal, I'm 20 weeks pregnant, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. And then, Paul kind of jokes and is like, yeah, what did you eat before our live stream? And she's like, I don't know. Did I swallow a rage pill or something? So she kind of leans into that whole like, oh, I was just being an emotional woman. I just swallowed a rage pill. I don't know what got into me. And she even said that in the community post too, like, oh, I didn't know what I was thinking. Your girl was acting wild. And so to me, that seems like, again, the kind of language that a man would use to kind of describe a woman, especially if he kind of wants to shut her down and show her or make her feel like, hey, you're being emotional and moody and blah, blah, blah. So another thing that bothered me is when Morgan kind of flippantly says, yeah, I can't believe, have you guys never apologized to your, significant other before? Do they never call you out before? What are other people doing in their marriage, essentially, and to counter that, like I said, I've been married for, 3 years now. And so to counter that, I want to say that yes, in marriage, you should apologize. But again, it doesn't need to be a public apology. That apology could have been kept just between you two. I don't think you owed your audience an apology. It wasn't that big of a fight and it wasn't that big of a deal. I think it'd be another thing if they had this really over the top argument where things just got way out of hand and rude things were said or harsh things were said, or if it felt like we were kind of intruding on a moment that we should not be intruding on, or a moment that could potentially cause a lot of trauma for their viewers if they grew up in a kind of household where their parents just really, really had it out and had these over-the-top aggressive arguments. Then I could see them saying, hey, we want to apologize if you guys have, witnessed this in your home life before, and if it was triggering to watch us kind of have it out that way, that should have been a private moment, then I think they would owe their audience an apology like that. But I don't think they owe them an apology just for getting in a silly little tiff that barely lasted 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes of their whole hour-long live stream. So yeah, I don't think they really owed people an apology for that. I think, again, Paul was kind of trying to do damage control and make it seem like they were a lot better than they actually appeared on that live stream. And Morgan kind of seems to want to have that narrative too when she says things like, oh, we're fine now, we're good, don't you guys let your husbands call you out? Aren't you married to someone who calls you out? And if you're not, you need to talk to them about that. And again, as a married woman, I would say also that yes, your husband, wife, significant other, or partner is allowed to call you out, absolutely, when you are acting over the top, when you're acting rude or offensive or in a way that's not usually like you or not becoming to you. But I think there's a respectful way to call someone out. There's a time and place to call someone out. And Paul was not respectful to Morgan by calling her out on the live stream, I think. I think he was actually being rude and unkind when he called her disrespectful and made her, kind of feel like a child. Like, he kind of talked to her like a child, like, you're disrespecting me right now, and I think you're being disrespectful, and I think you're being pushy. It was kind of like a very condescending, like, macho, like, alpha male kind of way of talking to her, trying to kind of put her back in her place as, the stay-at-home mom, the, subservient one in the relationship, which a lot of traditional Christian couples like them kind of view women as the subservient one in the household. So, his tone, his attitude, the fact that he was kind of chastising her like a child on live and, being like, hey, you're being disrespectful to me. I think time and place, again, I think he should have told her that once the cameras were turned off. He should have told her earnestly without being condescending or criticizing. He should have said, hey, I felt really disrespected on our live stream. I know that it was just a joke to you, but to me, it actually really hurt my feelings. And, this is why, and kind of, go from there. I think that would have been a more emotionally mature way to handle that situation, rather than kind of forcing Morgan to retract her statement and backpedal and be like, no, it was just all a joke, I'm sorry, you're right, I went too far, blah, blah, blah. I think Paul wanted to have that moment on camera, that moment on the live stream, but when Morgan didn't give it to him, he made her write that community post, and then they had to address it yet again in the clip that we just saw. So yeah, a lot of troubling things in there. Like I said, your husband, wife, partner is absolutely allowed to call you out, but I think time and place, I don't think in front of other people is the way to do it. I mean, if me and my husband have disagreements, we wait until we're home. If I need to call him out about something, I wait until we're alone. I don't need to do it right then and there. Things can wait, to protect the dignity of your partner, to protect the sanctity of your marriage. Some things can wait until you are alone in the privacy of your own home, and you can have a more heart-to-heart conversation instead of having it out in front of the cameras. And then kind of the last troubling thing, this is just like a sidebar, if you will, but it was interesting to see how, Paul was so okay all of a sudden with laughing at himself, showing that like Photoshop job of someone basically calling him a baby. It was interesting to see that he was like, yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty funny. And then he like immediately got serious again. Like he was all of a sudden trying to act like he was this, fun guy that could take a joke and could laugh at this, funny Photoshop image, basically calling him a baby. But then he like immediately moved on and was like, yeah, well, I did feel disrespected in that moment, but I'm glad we apologized and worked things out and blah, blah, blah. And he just seemed so happy, so thrilled once Morgan finally admitted that she apologized. I was watching his body language and how he was like smiling, and even made that joke about like, yeah, I'm not a pushover husband. And even though he kind of patted her knee to maybe like reassure her, like, oh, I'm just joking, I don't think it was a joke. I think he was very, very satisfied that he got his way, and he got Morgan to publicly apologize and make him look like the good guy, the good husband again. And the very last thing I want to tack on, speaking of public apologies and all of that, is, the day after the Super Bowl, or maybe it was the night of the Super Bowl, Paul posted that clip of Travis Kelce, the one that's now gone viral, of him getting up in his coach's face and being very aggressive and yelling at him. I don't know what they were yelling or arguing about. I didn't watch the Super Bowl, and I haven't listened to that clip with audio on, but you know the one I mean. But here is his Instagram post about that moment, and I just think it's so funny because this guy is so hung up on public apologies. Like, he's even calling Travis Kelce out, and it's like he needs to publicly apologize. So I think it's so funny that Paul is just so obsessed with public apologies. First Morgan and now Travis Kelce. But my question is, when are you gonna apologize, Paul? Where is your public apology? Like so many people were saying in those comments, I think Morgan was also owed an apology for Paul not recognizing that being 20 weeks pregnant is not easy. And she's opened up before on their Instagram about how her first birth experience with their firstborn son was really traumatic for her, and how every doctor appointment she has to check up on her pregnancy just fills her with dread and fills her with fear. And so she clearly is having, a difficult time with this second pregnancy emotionally, and is probably dreading or really anxious about the birthing experience again, since it seems like she hasn't quite healed emotionally, maybe even physically, from her first birthing experience. And so, I think Paul could have also given her some grace and recognized that even if she was being moody and hormonal and acting out because she's pregnant or whatever, that, she's pregnant. Like, cut her some slack. It wasn't, that harsh of a joke. It wasn't that big of a deal. And again, I think he could have afforded her some grace and respect by not calling her out on live stream, but waiting until the cameras were off and, having a more heart-to-heart conversation with her. And the very, very last thing I'll say, and I promise this is it, is that, they both mentioned, or at least Morgan mentioned, that she doesn't really read the comments. That when Paul asked her, did you read the comments on our community post? Did you read the comments in response to your apology? She was like, no. And Paul was like, yeah, I read you a few, but like, you didn't want to hear any more. And she was like, yeah, no, I didn't. And I'm still kind of making up my mind about reading comments as a YouTuber. I'm fairly new to YouTube. I think this is like my fourth full-length video. I make a bunch of shorts, but this is like my fourth full-length video. And I only have 50 subscribers at this point. So I'm a tiny, tiny, tiny content creator. So I'm still making up my mind about reading comments and all of that. But I try to read and respond to comments because I want to have a conversation with you guys and I want to engage with y'all. And so, I get why they may not want to respond to a bunch of comments, because I think they had 300 something. I only maybe get 10 on my videos. So I get that they can't respond to all comments, but I think it's interesting that, Morgan kind of stays away from the comments and doesn't really read them. And I know for some YouTubers, they do that because obviously it helps their mental health. Because understandably, it would be hard if you're just kind of flooded with negative comments all the time, and, sitting down and reading all of them could maybe damage your mental health. So if Morgan is protecting her mental health in that regard, great. If staying away from the comments is good for her in that way, I think she should keep doing that. But I think sometimes when people stay away from reading comments or reading other people's opinion, it's because they want to keep living in their echo chamber. And I'm sure y'all have heard that word thrown around on the internet, but it basically means when someone wants to just be surrounded by people who think like them, who vote like them, who believe in whatever religion they believe in, who have the same worldview as them, who have the same political views as them, and they don't want any outside opinion, right? They don't want anyone to oppose them. They don't want to hear a different point of view. They only want to be surrounded with people who think and act just like them. And people do that because I think they want to avoid maybe being faced with some things and avoid being kind of faced with some harsh truths. Like, I think a lot of commenters put in the comments. I don't think they were harsh in terms of being mean, but I think it was maybe a bit of a wake-up call to Paul and Morgan, or it could have been, of hey, the way you guys think you appear to us is not the way that you actually do. You think you appear as this fun, happy, vulnerable couple, but to all of us, we kind of see, some dysfunction, and we see some things that are kind of a bit of a red flag in the way that y'all relate to each other. So that's why sometimes people avoid reading comments. It's because they don't want to be faced with an opposing viewpoint. They want to kind of keep their worldview. They want to continue to see things the way that they see them, and they don't want to be challenged to maybe see things differently or see themselves through other people's eyes. So, and I've also noticed an interesting trend that Paul only comments or responds to comments that he agrees with. He doesn't respond to comments that he doesn't agree with. And so that also kind of paints a picture to me that the two of them stay away from the comments because they don't want to be faced with opposing viewpoints. They don't want to read something that might challenge them to kind of open their mind and maybe consider a different perspective, if you will. So anyway, I did not plan on making like a 40-minute video just based off of like 12 minutes of footage, but there was a lot to unpack, and like I said, it kind of led to a deeper conversation about marriage and toxic masculinity, and I hope it kind of shed some light on those topics for you and maybe brought up a different viewpoint that you had never really considered before, because that's kind of what I'm aiming to do with this channel, like I said, to kind of show a different side of Christians and Christianity and kind of oppose some more traditional people like Paul and Morgan. So yeah, if you enjoyed what I do here, if you enjoyed this video, again, I would really appreciate if you would give it a like. That literally lets me know that you like it and you want to see more content like this. And again, if you want to join our club and continue to have conversations like this, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so that you get notified anytime that I upload. And I will see you guys in the comments of this video, because again, I'd love to chat with you guys and hear what you think. So let's continue this chat down in the comments below. See you there.